I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Don't click away, don't scroll. Because I'm about to tell you something that I've only ever told two people in my entire life, and one of them was a stranger on a train who I knew I would never see again. The other one is the reason this story exists. I want to be honest with you from the very first word because this story deserves honesty. It is not what the title sounds like, it is not scandalous, it is not what your brain is probably already constructing behind your eyes right now. It is something far more complicated than that. It is a story about loneliness. It is a story about what happens when you are 24 years old and you have built such thick walls around yourself that you don't even notice they're there anymore, until someone walks straight through them like they were never standing at all. It is a story about a farmhouse, a party full of strangers, a man old enough to be my grandfather, and one conversation upstairs in a room full of dust and old photographs that changed the entire direction of my life. I'm not exaggerating. I wish I were because it would be easier to explain. But I'm not. So let me take you back. Let me take you all the way back to the summer I was 24, the summer everything fell apart and then, somehow, unexpectedly, quietly, put itself back together. This is my true story. The summer I was 24 years old, I was drowning. Not literally, though there were nights that felt close enough to it. I was drowning in the quiet way that no one around you can see. The kind of drowning where you still show up to work, still respond to texts, still laugh at the right moments in conversations. The kind where if you told anyone how deep underwater you actually were, they'd look at you with genuine confusion and say, "But you seem fine." I seemed fine. I was not fine. Let me tell you what my life looked like from the outside that summer, just so you understand the gap between appearance and reality. I had just turned 24 in June. I was living in a mid-sized city, sharing an apartment with two roommates who were perfectly nice people but who I barely knew, the way you can live with someone for a year and still only know their coffee order and their Netflix preferences. I was working at a graphic design firm, entry-level, underpaid, the kind of job that sounds creative on paper and mostly involves resizing logos and attending meetings about meetings. I had friends, sort of. I had people, a group I'd fallen into through a college connection, friendly enough, fun at parties, the kind of relationships that exist in the space between alone and truly known. We got drinks. We sent memes. We celebrated birthdays with a bar tab and forgot the actual conversations by morning. I had been single for 14 months, not by choice exactly, more by a kind of exhausted default. My last relationship had ended with the particular cruelty that only truly intimate connections can manage, quietly, gradually, and with the mutual understanding that we had both been performing love rather than actually feeling it. We'd parted without a fight, without tears even, and somehow that was the worst part, that we could let go of each other so cleanly with so little wreckage. Like what we'd had never been solid enough to break. And I was gay, out mostly. I'd been out since college in the way that a lot of us are out, openly within a certain radius, carefully within another, and still, in certain rooms, in certain company, quietly invisible. My family knew. My mother had cried happy tears, she insisted, and I believed her mostly. My father had shaken my hand, which was both deeply uncomfortable and deeply him. My younger sister had said asterisk obviously and gone back to her phone, which was the most validating response of the three. But being out and being seen asterisk are two very different things. I was out. I was not seen. Not really. And I didn't know how to fix that, or even if it could be fixed, or even, and this is the part that scared me most, whether I actually wanted it to be. Because if you let people see you, truly see you, they can truly hurt you. And I had been truly hurt before. And somewhere along the line, the math of that had stopped adding up in favor of openness. So I built the walls, smiled at the right times, kept things light, kept things easy, kept things asterisk surface. And I was drowning in it. It was my coworker Priya who invited me to the farmhouse party. Priya was one of those people who seems to genuinely enjoy existence, not in an annoying, performed way, but in a way that makes you vaguely suspicious that she knows something the rest of us don't. She laughed easily, made friends with strangers on public transport, ate lunch outside even when it was cloudy. We weren't close, we were work-friendly, the relationship that lives between professional and personal without committing to either. But she'd noticed me being quieter than usual that week, in the way that perceptive people notice things when you don't realize you're being noticed. On Friday afternoon she stopped by my desk and said, "Hey, come to this thing tomorrow." What thing? A party, sort of. My friend's family has this old farmhouse about an hour outside the city. He opens it up every summer for like a big gathering. It's not a crazy party, more like people, food, a fire pit, a lot of open space. Very chill, you look like you could use some open space. I started to make an excuse. I could feel one forming, something about plans, about being tired, about next time. Don't asterisk Priya said. I wasn't. You were, you do this face when you're about to make something up. She pointed at my face, that face. I put my face down. One afternoon, she said, if you hate it, you can leave. I'll even drive so you won't feel trapped. You can tell me you need to go and I'll take you back. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, I want to, that's different. She said it simply, without weight, the way people say things when they mean them without needing credit for meaning them. I said yes. I don't know exactly why. Some combination of the genuine kindness in her offer and the private acknowledgement, one I could barely make even to myself, that one more weekend alone in my apartment with my walls and my Wi-Fi was going to cost me something I might not get back. Great, she said, already walking away. I'll pick you up at 1. The drive out of the city took exactly 57 minutes because I was anxious and counting. Priya talked most of the way, comfortable, easy, filling the car with stories about her friend whose family owned the property. A guy named Tamaz, 26, third-generation Colombian American, whose grandparents had bought the farmland in the 70s and who now used it primarily for parties in the summer and something he called asterisk, aggressive gardening in the fall. Is it going to be a lot of people? I asked. Maybe 30, 40, it's not huge. Don't worry, it's the kind of party where you can find a corner if you need one. She knew me even then, I think, better than I knew myself. The farmhouse appeared at the end of a long gravel driveway lined with oak trees, and I want to take a moment here to actually describe it to you because the place itself mattered. Places always matter, they hold things. It was old, older than it looked, which was already old. White painted wood gone a little gray at the edges. A wide porch that wrapped around the front and one side, the kind built for sitting in, for watching weather come in across flat land. The windows were tall and slightly wavy, original glass, rippled with age, the kind that distorts the light into something almost liquid. Behind the house, a barn, red, genuine, not the decorative kind. Fields that had been farmed once and were now more wildflower meadow than anything else, tall grasses moving in the July heat, goldenrod and Queen Anne's lace catching the afternoon sun. And beyond the fields, a tree line dark and still. It was the kind of place that doesn't apologize for what it is. The kind of place that has absorbed enough time, enough seasons, enough human moments, that it radiates a kind of quiet gravity. I stepped out of the car and stood there for a moment, just looking at it. Beautiful, right? Priya said. Yeah, I said, and I meant it more than the word could carry. The party was, as promised, low-key. Mismatched lawn chairs arranged around a fire pit not yet lit. A long folding table under the porch awning with food, the kind of spread assembled from contributions, dishes in pots with handwritten labels, a cooler full of drinks. People milled around in the easy way of people who have been here before. Who know the rhythms of this place, who don't need to perform. Tamaz, when Priya introduced us, turned out to be exactly what she'd described, warm, unhurried, the kind of host who makes you feel immediately like you've been coming here for years. He shook my hand with both of his, said glad you made it like he meant it, and pointed me toward the food before drifting back to a conversation he'd left. I got a drink, found an edge of the gathering to stand at, watched. I was good at watching. It required nothing of me and revealed everything about everyone else. I watched the social geometries form and reform, who leaned toward whom, who laughed the loudest, who was doing the same thing I was doing from a different corner. I had been there maybe an hour, was working on my second beer, was starting to think that Priya was right and this had been a good idea, when I noticed the man on the porch. He was sitting in one of the wooden rocking chairs at the far end of the porch, apart from the main gathering, not hiding exactly but separate, a little outside the radius of the party. He was old. I want to be clear about that because I don't want to smooth it over or imply otherwise. He was genuinely, visibly old. Mid-70s at least, maybe older, white-haired and deliberate in movement with the particular uprightness of someone who had been tall in their youth and refused to let age take that from them. He wore a chambray shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and tan trousers. He had a glass of something, not beer, something darker, on the small table beside the rocking chair. He was reading. At a party. He had brought a book to a party, set himself apart from it, and was reading. I found this extremely relatable. I don't know what made me look at him the second time. The third. There was something in his stillness that was different from isolation, not lonely, not excluded, but chosen. Like the party was happening around him with his full permission, and he had simply decided his participation would be bookish and tangential, and he was completely at peace with that. I watched him for maybe 5 minutes before he looked up, not searching, not having noticed me staring, just pausing in his reading the way readers do, surfacing briefly before going back under. Our eyes met. He didn't look away, neither did I. And then, unhurriedly, without any great significance, as though it were perfectly natural, he tilted his head slightly toward the empty rocking chair beside him. An invitation. Clear, simple, quiet. I looked at it, looked back at him. He had already returned to his book. I don't know what made me go. Later I would think about that moment a lot, the precise mechanism by which a person who had spent a year building walls, keeping surfaces, staying in corners, crosses a porch toward a stranger and sits down. I don't have a complete answer. Maybe it was the fact that he'd already gone back to reading, that the invitation had come without pressure, without expectation, without the weight of performance attached to it. Maybe it was the book, or the rocking chair, or the particular quality of late afternoon light on the porch. Maybe I was just ready without knowing I was ready, the way seasons change without the day they change being any different from the days before. I walked over, sat down. He didn't look up right away. We sat in silence for a good 30 seconds, just the sounds of the party behind us, the grasses moving in the field, a bird somewhere in the oak trees. Then he said, without looking up from the book, "You don't really want to be at a party." Not a question, an observation. I wanted to want to be, I said, surprising myself with the honesty of it. He made a small sound, appreciative, like I'd gotten an answer right that he hadn't fully expected me to get. He turned a page. "That's more self-awareness than most people your age manage," he said. "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." He looked up at me then for the first time at close range. His eyes were light gray or very pale blue and sharp in the way that eyes sometimes stay sharp long after everything else shows age. "I'm Walt," he said. "I'm Caleb," I said. "Caleb," he repeated it the way some people repeat names, like they're fitting them to the face. "You're Priya's friend." "Work friend," loosely. "She's good people," he said simply. "My grandson thinks very highly of her." "Tomas is your grandson." "He is, which makes this," he gestured at the land, the house, the whole living geography of the place, my family's home, or was, he runs it now, I just come back to it in the summers and pretend I'm still useful. There was something in the way he said pretend I'm still useful, not bitterly, not sadly, but with a very dry, very clear-eyed humor, that made me feel immediately at ease in a way I couldn't explain. "What are you reading?" I asked. He held up the cover, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I felt something shift in my chest. Not dramatically, just a small, quiet shift, like a door opening a crack. "I've read that," I said. "Have you?" Not a question, he was looking at me with those sharp, pale eyes, and "It made me feel less alone," I said, and then it made me feel more alone, and then I wasn't sure there was a difference. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That is exactly the correct response to that book." And we started talking. "I'm going to try to recreate for you what happened over the next 2 hours on that porch, and I'm going to tell you right now that I'll fail. Not because I don't remember it, I remember it with a clarity that still sometimes startles me, the way certain memories refuse to fade regardless of what surrounds them. But because the conversation we had, Walt and I, was the kind that resists being summarized. It was alive in the way that good conversations are alive, breathing, shifting, one thing becoming another without clear borders between them. But let me try. We talked about James Baldwin first, about Giovanni's Room specifically, about David, the American in Paris, who destroys the people who love him because he cannot accept being loved by them, about shame as a weapon a person turns on themselves, about the specific violence of a life lived in performance. Walt talked about Baldwin the way someone talks about a writer who saved them, not with academic distance but with personal recognition. I first read that book in 1974, he said. I was 31 years old, married, 2 children, a third on the way. He paused, rocking slowly. I read it sitting in my truck in a parking lot because I didn't want my wife to see the cover. I didn't say anything, I let him have the space. I understood every word of it, he said, and I put it under the seat when I was done and I didn't take it out again for 11 years. 11 years. What happened after 11 years, I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. My wife died, he said, breast cancer, she was 46. He said it with grief that was old and worn smooth, the way grief gets when it has been carried long enough, still heavy but no longer sharp. She was the best person I knew, the best person I've probably ever known, and one of the last things she said to me, she knew, I think. She always knew, though we never said it. One of the last things she said was, Walt, after this, try to be brave. The air between us was very still. Were you, I asked, after? He turned those pale eyes on me. Eventually, he said. I was 62 by then, my kids were grown, Tomas's father, my son, he took it the hardest, not the loss of his mother, though that was hard enough. He searched for the word, the revision, of who he thought his father was. Did you lose him? For a while, 3 years, he's a good man, my son, he came back. It took time and honesty, and his wife, God bless that woman, was the first one to say what exactly is the problem here and mean it as a genuine question. Walt smiled at the memory, and it was a smile with layers in it. We're good now, as good as it can be with all the time we can't get back. I sat with that for a moment. How old are you now? I asked. 76, he said it without weight, like a fact. 14 years out of the closet, which sounds like a long time until you consider that I was in it for 62 years. He paused. Most of my life was the before, the after is shorter, but it is. He looked out at the field, at the goldenrod moving in the last of the day's light. It is richer, in ways I can barely explain, and am grateful for every single morning. I felt something in my throat, a tightening that I recognized. What was it like, I asked, living all that time? In performance. He offered. Yes. He rocked for a moment, thinking. Exhausting, he said finally. Above everything else, above the loneliness, above the guilt, it was just exhausting because you can never fully rest. There is always a part of you on guard, monitoring, editing. He glanced at me. You know something about that. It wasn't a question. I looked down at my hands. I'm out, I said. I've been out for years, it's not the same. I didn't say it was the same, he said gently. Being out and being at rest are two different things. The accuracy of that hit me somewhere behind the sternum. Yeah, I said very quietly. You're wearing your walls, he said simply. I could see them from across the yard, polished, well-maintained, very good walls. He said it without judgment, almost admiringly, like a craftsman appreciating the quality of work. I recognize them because I wore mine for 62 years. I know exactly what they look like from the outside. I didn't say anything. How long, he asked. Since I started. Not since you came out. How long have you been keeping everyone at arm's length? I felt my throat tighten harder. The honest answer was, I don't know, long enough that I can't remember clearly what before felt like. I said something like that. Walt nodded slowly. Can I tell you something that took me entirely too long to learn, he said. Yes, I said. The walls don't protect you from pain, he said. I know that's what they feel like, I know that's their whole purpose. If I don't let anything in, nothing can hurt me, but walls are not selective. They keep out the hurt, yes, but they keep out everything else too. The warmth, the surprise, the people who might have reached you. He paused. Pain gets in anyway, eventually, it finds the cracks. But the good things, the love, the real connection, the moments that make a life worth the trouble of living it, those are polite. They knock, and if you don't open the door, they go away. The light was changing. Getting lower, going golden, that particular late July afternoon light that makes everything look like memory while it's still happening. Somewhere behind us the fire pit was being lit. I could smell the wood smoke beginning. I wasted so much time, Walt said. It was not self-pity, it was assessment, the clear-eyed kind. Not the years in the closet, those were complicated and I've made peace with them as best I can, but even after I came out, I spent years being out but still contained, still cautious, still waiting for proof that it was safe to be fully here. He looked at me steadily. I am 76 years old, Caleb. And I can count on 2 hands the number of years I have lived without waiting for proof. Something broke open in me. I don't know a better way to say it than that. Something that had been closed for a long time, something I'd kept carefully sealed and called protection and called self-preservation, just opened. I felt my eyes get hot. I looked away out at the field because I was embarrassed. Because I was 24 and a stranger was describing the architecture of my interior life with more precision than I'd ever managed myself, and I didn't know what to do with that. Hey, Walt said quietly. I looked back at him. His expression was, I keep coming back to this word and I don't have another kind, not pitying, not gentle in the way that condescends, just kind the way wisdom is sometimes kind when it's been earned by suffering. You're young, he said. I'm not saying that to minimize what you're carrying, I'm saying it because you have time, real time, time I didn't let myself use. He leaned forward slightly. Don't do what I did, don't spend the years that are supposed to be the vivid ones waiting until it's safe. It won't be safe. Life doesn't get safe, it gets richer or it gets smaller, and that is the only choice you actually get to make. I nodded, I didn't trust my voice fully. Richer or smaller, he said again, settling back. We sat in silence for a moment. The fire was going now, orange and warm in the growing dusk. Someone had put music on, something acoustic drifting out from inside the house. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. The 14 years since you came out, are you, I searched for the right word, are you happy? He took his time with it, which I respected. Happy is a large word, he said finally. It covers too much ground, but I am present, I am here in my life, not watching it from behind glass. He picked up his glass from the side table and looked at it for a moment. I have people who know me, the real shape of me, not the performance. I had one significant relationship after Alina died, a man named Robert. It ended when he got sick, he passed 4 years ago, but I had it. I had something true and I am so grateful. His voice had gone quieter, so grateful that I didn't die without having had something true. The gold in the air deepened. I'm sorry about Robert, I said. Thank you, he said simply. A pause. I said slowly, that I've been very scared for a long time, and I've been telling myself it was something else, practicality, independence, not needing anyone, but I think it was just fear. Yes, Walt said, that is usually what it is. I don't know how to, I stopped, I don't know what to do with that. You're already doing it, he said. What do you mean? You just told the truth about it out loud to another person. He settled back in the rocking chair, looking out at the field. That's how it starts. It starts with saying the true thing out loud, it goes from there. Now I have to stop here for a second. Because I know what you've been waiting for. I know the title has been sitting in the back of your mind this whole time. The old man took me upstairs, and I know the shape your brain has probably been building around that phrase. I need to tell you what actually happened. Because the reality of it is something I could not have invented if I tried. About an hour into our conversation, as the fire pit crowd grew and the music got louder, Walt stood up from the rocking chair with the deliberate ease of a man who moves carefully but refuses to move weakly. There's something I'd like to show you, he said, if you're willing. Show me. Upstairs in the house, he looked at me with those pale eyes. I want to show you something, it matters to the conversation we've been having, or I think it does. I followed him into the house. The inside of the farmhouse was everything the outside promised, accumulated, honest, full of living. Old furniture with the kind of wear that comes from actual use. Photographs on the walls, dozens of them, the analog kind in actual frames. A staircase with a wooden banister gone smooth from decades of hands. We went up the stairs, Walt taking them slowly, one hand on the rail, and I stayed just behind him, not rushing him, feeling the house around us as we went. At the top of the stairs, a short hallway, he led me to the last door on the right. It was a bedroom, clearly unused for some time or used only for storage and seasonal visits. A single bed with a white coverlet, a wooden dresser, a window looking out over the back fields, now deep gold in the last of the sun. And on the walls, covering almost every available surface, photographs. Old photographs, black and white, some of them sepia, and then color increasingly as they progressed, dozens of them, framed and arranged not in neat rows but in the organic, accretive way of something assembled over time. My family, Walt said, 4 generations in this house. I walked slowly around the room, looking. There were people I didn't know, men and women in old clothing, formal photographs from what looked like the 1920s and 30s, then something more casual as the decades moved forward. A young family on the porch, the same porch we'd just been sitting on. Children on the same oak trees I'd driven past on the way in. And then Walt pointed to a particular photograph near the window. A young man, maybe 25, dark-haired, serious-faced, handsome in the direct way of old photographs, standing in front of the barn in what looked like the early 1970s. "That's me," Walt said. I looked at young Walt, then at the old man beside me. "I was 24 in that photograph," Walt said. "Summer of 1972, I had been married for 2 years. Tomas's father was 6 months old." He looked at the photograph with a kind of complex tenderness. "I was, in that photograph, the most successfully performing version of myself I had ever achieved, and the most lost." I stood looking at the young man in the photograph. "He doesn't look lost," I said. "That was the point," Walt said. Silence. "I bring people up here sometimes," he said. "Not often, only when I think it might help, when I see something in someone that I recognize." He looked at me. "I saw it in you across the yard." "What did you see?" "Me," he said simply, 50 years ago." I looked at young Walt in the photograph for a long time. 24 years old, at a farmhouse, going through the motions, keeping the walls up, living in the performance of a life rather than the life itself. I could see it now that he'd named it, not in the expression was convincingly composed, but in something around the eyes, something braced. "He's bracing," I said softly. "Yes," Walt said. "In the photograph, he's ready for impact." "He always was," Walt said, "for 50 years. The last of the sun came through the wavy old glass of the window and fell across the photographs, across all those faces, all those recorded moments, all that accumulated human time." "What do you want me to see?" I asked. "What are you trying to show me?" Walt was quiet for a moment. "That boy in that photograph," he said finally, "spent the next 50 years being afraid of what he was. Afraid of what would happen if he stopped managing the perception of himself. And some of what he was afraid of happened anyway, because it always does. And most of what he was afraid of never happened, because most fears are just futures we invent to justify not living the present." He turned to look at me directly. "I don't want to watch you do what he did," he said. "I know I'm a stranger to you. I know that is a strange thing for a stranger to say. But I have spent 14 years wishing someone had grabbed me by the shoulders at 24 and told me you don't have to wait. You do not have to earn the right to be fully present in your own life. You do not have to perform your way to some future moment when it will finally be safe to be real." His voice was very steady, very clear. "It does not get safer, you just get older, and then, if you're lucky, you run out of patience with the waiting." I was very still. Something was happening in my chest that I didn't have language for. Not sadness, exactly, not joy, something that occupied the space between them, a door opening. That's the closest I can get to it, like something that had been shut for a long time was simply and quietly swinging open. "I don't know how to stop waiting," I said. My voice came out smaller than I intended. "You start by deciding to," he said. "That's all, you just decide, and then you do the next thing and the thing after that." He paused. "It doesn't have to be dramatic, you don't have to reinvent yourself overnight, you just stop editing so much, you let a few real things out, you let a few real things in." I nodded. I was looking at the photograph again. "Will you do something for me?" Walt asked. "What?" "Tomorrow morning, not tonight. Tonight you're going to go back downstairs and eat food and be around people, and that is enough for one day, but tomorrow morning I want you to think of one real thing, one true thing about yourself or your life that you have been keeping behind the wall, and tell it to someone." He paused. "Anyone, it doesn't have to be a confession or a big revelation. Just one true thing, offered without the usual editing." "Why?" "Because it gets easier every time," he said. "The first time is the hardest, after that it's just practice." I looked at him. "You're a very unusual person," I said. Something crinkled around his eyes. "I'm a very old person who wasted a great deal of time," he said. "It clarifies priorities." We went back downstairs. Walt settled into a new conversation with Tamaz and an older woman I didn't know. Before he rejoined the party, he shook my hand, the old formal kind of handshake, firm, brief, and held it for a moment and said, "It was good to meet you, Caleb." "It was good to meet you, Walt," I said. And that was it. We didn't have a dramatic farewell, we didn't exchange information. He went back to the party and I went back to the fire pit and found Priya and stood in the warmth of the fire as the summer night settled in around the farmhouse. She looked at me a little carefully. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, "actually yeah." "What were you and Walt talking about up there?" "Life," I said. "That's very vague." "It was very specific," I said, "but I don't have the words for it yet." She nodded like that made sense and handed me a hot dog on a stick, and we stood at the fire and I let the warmth of it hit my face and I thought about young Walt in the photograph, bracing, and I thought about 14 years of being out before being at rest, and I thought about richer or smaller and the polite knock of the things that don't get let in. On the drive home, about halfway back to the city, the farmhouse behind us and the highway ahead, Priya's playlist cycling through something quiet and good, I said. Can I tell you something? Obviously, she said. I've been really lonely, I said, for a long time, and I've been pretending that I'm not because it felt easier than admitting it. But I've been genuinely, deeply lonely, and I've been letting that turn me into someone more closed than I want to be, and I think it's been affecting more things than I realized. Priya drove. I know, she said very gently. You know, I've been watching you disappear inside yourself for 6 months. I didn't know how to say anything without making it weird. She glanced at me briefly. I'm really glad you said it. I'm really glad you made me come today, I said. Old Walt got to you, huh? Old Walt got to me. He does that, she said. Tomas says he was different after he came out, like he turned from black and white to color. A pause. He's a remarkable person. He is, I said. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. So what happens now? Priya asked. I don't know, I said honestly, but I think I stop waiting for it to be safe. I think I just start showing up more, actually showing up. Good, she said simply. I want to tell you what happened after that summer because I think this is the part that matters most. Not immediately, not in some dramatic overnight transformation because that is not how real change works. Real change is quiet and incremental and mostly invisible while it's happening, only revealing itself when you look back across enough distance to see the shape of it. But things changed, they genuinely changed. I started seeing my therapist again. I'd stopped going about a year earlier, telling myself I was fine, which is always the surest sign that someone is not fine. I walked back in and said, I've been less honest than I needed to be, let me try again. I let Priya in, actually in. We went from work-friendly to genuinely close over the following months. She became and remains one of my most important people. What started that night on the drive home, one true thing, offered without editing, became the foundation of a real friendship. The kind where you can say the hard stuff and not lose the person. I started being more honest with myself about what I wanted. Not just in relationships but in work, in how I spent my time and what I let myself need. That sounds small but it was quietly enormous. I had been so afraid of needing things, of being caught needing something and not getting it, that I'd stopped acknowledging my own needs entirely. Starting to name them even just to myself was like turning a light on in a room I'd been navigating in the dark. About 8 months after the farmhouse party, I started dating someone. A man named Jordan, quiet, thoughtful, genuinely funny in the specific way I find disarming, which is dry and self-aware and never at anyone else's expense. We met at a bookshop. We talked for 2 hours and then kept talking over coffee. On our second date, something Walt had said came back to me. You start by deciding to asterisk, and I made a decision. I decided not to perform, not to present the edited, managed, wall-maintained version of myself. I decided to just be a little awkward, a little nervous, a little more real than I usually allowed myself to be with someone new. It was terrifying. It worked. He told me months later that the thing that had made him certain he wanted to pursue something real with me was that I'd seemed genuinely present, not performing, not managing, present. Which was almost exactly the word Walt had used. I am here in my life, not watching it from behind glass. I went back to the farmhouse the following summer. Priya invited me again and I went, and I hoped Walt would be there. He was. Same rocking chair. Different book, The Hours by Michael Cunningham this time, which I noted with something that felt like recognition. He looked up when he saw me coming across the yard and something in his face shifted, not surprise, not quite, but something adjacent to satisfaction. The way a person looks when a hypothesis is confirmed. I sat down in the rocking chair beside him. How'd it go? He asked, still not a man for preambles. Better, I said, a lot better. Tell me. So I told him, the therapy, Priya, Jordan, the decision made on a second date to stop performing. The way things had quietly, incrementally shifted, how I laughed more genuinely now, was more present in rooms, had started doing things because I actually wanted to rather than because they were what someone like me was supposed to want. Walt listened the way Walt listened, fully receiving it, not gathering ammunition for his next point. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. Good, he said. Just that good. And then, are you happy? I thought about it the way he had thought about it the year before, seriously, without rushing to the easy answer. I think I'm getting there, I said. I think I'm building something real. He nodded. That's the right answer, he said. You told me last year that happy is a large word, I said. It is, but you can still be in the direction of it. He picked up his book. You're in the direction of it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. The July light was the same gold it had been the year before. The fields were the same goldenrod and Queen Anne's lace. The house rose behind us, full of its accumulated time. How's Robert? I asked, and then immediately regretted it because I remembered he passed 4 years ago and I braced. But Walt shook his head softly. He's been gone 5 years now, but I talk to him still, old habit. A small smile. He would have liked you. How do you know? He liked people who were in the process of becoming, Walt said. People who were doing the work. He had very little patience for the finished article but great tenderness for the unfinished. I smiled. I'm very unfinished, I said. Good, Walt said. Stay that way as long as you can. Okay. I want to talk to you directly now. Not as a storyteller, as a person. Because if you're watching this video, if you're here in the LGBTQ Storytime space, watching someone tell a true story about their life, then I think it's possible you're carrying something. Something you haven't fully put down. Something you've been managing and containing and keeping behind a wall you built for good reasons that may have outlasted their usefulness. I want to say to you what Walt said to me. The walls don't protect you from pain. I know that's what they feel like. I know the logic of them is airtight. If nothing gets in, nothing can hurt me. But pain gets in anyway, eventually through the cracks. It always does. The walls just mean that when the hurt finds you, you're alone in there, behind glass, without anyone on the other side. And the love, the real connection, the people who might reach you, the moments that make a life feel like it was worth all the difficult work of living it, those knock. They're polite, they don't force the door. If you don't open it, they go somewhere else. You do not have to earn the right to be fully present in your own life. You don't have to wait until it's safe. It doesn't get safe. It gets richer or it gets smaller, and that is genuinely the only choice you get to make. If you're gay or queer or questioning or somewhere on that enormous, beautiful, complex spectrum of human experience, I want you to know that being out is not the same as being at rest. Some of us come out and then spend years being out but still contained, still waiting for proof, still editing. You don't have to wait for proof. And if you're young, if you're 24 or 22 or 17 and reading this or watching this from somewhere private, somewhere you had to be careful to find, I want you to hear this. There is a version of your future where you are present, where you are not watching your life from behind glass, where you have let real things in and let real things out, and you are in the actual, physical, lived experience of your life and not the managed performance of it. That version is not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed, but it is available. It is asterisk possible. And the only thing standing between you and it is the decision to stop waiting for permission. One true thing, that's all Walt asked of me. Tell one true thing to one person without the usual editing. Try it. See what happens. I should tell you how the story of Walt ends. Or rather, how my part of it ends. The third summer I went back to the farmhouse and Walt wasn't there. Tamaz told me gently at the fire pit Walt had had a fall in March, nothing catastrophic, but it had taken a lot out of him. He was living with Walt's son now, Tamaz's father, being cared for, not coming out to the farmhouse this summer, maybe not coming again. I stood at the fire and felt the absence of him in that rocking chair like a physical thing. I went to the rocking chair anyway, sat in it, looked out at the fields. I thought about young Walt in the photograph upstairs, 24 years old, successfully performing, deeply lost, braced for impact. I thought about the boy I had been sitting in this chair 2 summers ago, same age, same walls, same braced quality around the eyes. And I thought about Robert, the man Walt had loved, the man who loved people who were in the process of becoming. 5 years gone, but still talked to, still present in the way people remain present when we keep making space for them. I thought about Jordan asleep at my apartment right then. We'd moved in together 3 months earlier and I had been terrified and I had done it anyway. I thought about how it felt to wake up next to someone who knew the real shape of me and wasn't alarmed by it. I thought about Priya inside the farmhouse right then, laughing at something Tamaz had said. I thought about my mother who I had called last Christmas and actually talked to, not the surface version, not the edited performance, but actually talked to in the way of two people who are trying to know each other better than they currently do. We cried a little, it was good. I sat in Walt's chair in the fading summer light and I thought, richer. I chose richer. I never saw Walt again. Tamaz told me the following spring that he had passed quietly in January, at home in his son's house with people around him. He was 77. 14 years out of the closet, 14 years of being present instead of behind glass. The after is shorter, but it is richer. I sat with that for a long time after Tamaz told me. I sat with the smallness of 14 years against a 77-year life. I sat with the unfairness of it, the years before, the performance, the waiting. I sat with the gratefulness, for Robert, for the farmhouse, for whatever instinct made him look up from his book and tilt his head at an empty rocking chair when a closed-off 24-year-old was standing across the yard trying to disappear. And I sat with this, it was enough. 14 years of the real thing was enough to make a life rich, enough to matter, enough that a man could go with gratefulness rather than regret. And then I thought about how many years I have left. And I thought, don't waste them waiting. So that's it. That's the story of the farmhouse party. That's the story of the old man who took me upstairs. Not what you expected, I know, maybe not what the algorithm expected either. But it's true, every word of it is true, and I have been wanting to tell it for a long time because Walt told me something that I have been carrying ever since, that the first time you say the true thing out loud to another person is the hardest time. After that, it's just practice. So this is my practice. This is me saying true things in the direction of being present rather than performing. If this story reached you, if any part of it sounded like something you're living, something you're carrying, I want you to know that you're not alone in it, not even close. We are all in some version standing in a yard trying not to be seen, and some of us are lucky enough to encounter someone who has already walked the long way around and come back to say, you don't have to wait. You just don't. Choose richer. Choose presence. Start with one true thing. See you next time.